Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Committee of the Whole meeting for November 14th, 2023. The town of Hinton respectfully acknowledges that it is located on the First Peoples traditional lands. We recognize this traditional territory to show respect and understanding to those who walk this land since time immemorial. I don't know why I can't say that word. In memoriam. Today, we uphold our ongoing responsibility to work together in the spirit of the intent of the treaties with all the First Peoples and nations that call this place home. The town expresses gratitude for the opportunity to build a better community on these sacred lands for generations to come. And with that, I will call this meeting to order. Council, are there any changes, deletions to our agenda? And not seeing or hearing any. Administration.
Nothing from administration.
Okay. Thank you all. We'll move on to the adoption of our agenda. So I would need a motion, and Councillor Slashing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move that the council or the committee adopt the agenda for committee of the whole meeting on November 14th, 2023 as presented.
And thank you, sir. I'm sorry.
Call to question.
Oh, yes, I'm waiting. Jen, you're gonna put it up there?
Yeah, I think I'll start. Yes, I will put it up for you.
So not to delay this, you guys, I'll have you guys just vote on your computer and I'll raise my hand. So the motion is that committee adopt the agenda as presented. And if we can have everyone vote, and we all voted in. Right,
Votes there.
And that's carried. Thank you very much.
Sorry, my mistake.
Okay, so Jen, is there anybody here for a minute with council?
No, there's
And do we have any delegations or presentations today?
no, there are not.
Nothing. So we will move on to reports from administration. And the first report that we're going to be doing is going to be found on page 3, and it is the 2024 Civic Agency funding request, and that's presented by Gail.
Thank you, Chair. I will refer that to Ms. Forbo.
Thank you. Good afternoon, committee. The item before you is the culmination of the House series of meetings. The space has been made on the agenda for groups receiving funding from the town of Hinton to present an operational update for their group. Providing space for these annual presentations assists with accountability and awareness from both group perspective as well as the towns. The report before committee this evening is all of the requests that have been received for the 2024 budget process so far. So you'll see in the report there are option 1 is should you find it acceptable as written to accept it in one motion, or alternatively motions to go through and confer and discuss on each group is available. My colleague, Director Duke, is available for any specific questions on operational or the agreements that are in place, and myself here as well to answer any questions for more of the financial ones. With that, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, administration and Councillor Taylor.
To the rest of council, my preference is to go through these individually because I think we have things to talk about with these individually. That's my preference. And I have a question to administration. Because I see that we have a tax challenge with, potentially last time we had a 10 to 11% tax increase unless you've done something really magical that I don't know about. If we save money on this $478,000, does that go directly help with that problem on an operating side?
Through the
Or does
chair.
it depend which issue it is here?
Through the chair to all of committee. The draft documents that you've seen to date from budget do have all of these asks included. So any reductions in anything from this point forward will have a direct correlation to where we land on the final operating budget.
Thanks. Then generally speaking, when it comes to these items here, with one or two exceptions, I'm not in favor of any tax increases, any increases in any of these items. Because of the tax challenge that we're facing, that's sort of generally what my theme will be, with the exception of one topic perhaps, but maybe two. Thank you very much.
So. Councilor Taylor, what I'm hearing you say is you would like to go through each one of these individually. And you now are not in favor of any tax increase or any increase in any. That's correct?
Essentially, no, with the exception of one or two.
All right.
Then we'll be another decrease.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
So I can start with one of the ones, the disc golf. I'm okay, they're not asking for any increase, so. I would seek to get your voting with me that the Disc Golf Association have, I believe it was $5,150. Plus a $5,000 contribution to their capital reserve. That doesn't represent an increase, so I seek your approval for that, please. And they've done really good work with the money we've given them, so I think that's a good value.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Jim, the committee may find it helpful if the chart, which is on page 4 of 66, was visible to them, because these motions, if they're wanting to go through them, have no amounts in them. I don't know if that's possible to put that up for them.
Well, I have the recommended action, so sorry, my apologies. I have the recommended actions on there, and I was assuming they wanted to go through them one by one and populate them this way, seek consensus, and Madam Chair,
Yes.
does that work?
So,
That's what I just did.
Councilor Taylor, you're saying on page 4 what they're speaking, right?
Yeah, I have a table right here, right from the table. I put the number up there. The number's up there. We just need to call the question unless there's any comments or anything.
Okay, so we do have a consensus. Any councilors like to speak to it?
Point of clarification, Madam Chair, so I think more so everybody else knows, we're only voting on A that's listed up there right now.
Yes.
Perfect.
So if there's no other input or questions from council, I will call this. So Jen, if you want to put this one up in the photo. Okay, council, we have a from Councilor Taylor that committee seek consensus to include the Disc Golf Association 2024 operating and reserve allocation funding requests in the proposed 2024 operating budget. Hinton Disc Golf Association 5,150 operational funding plus 5,000 contribution to capital reserve. Don't have that on my screen, so are you guys able to follow?
Yeah. Sign in.
Sign in, Councilor Reese.
I did, okay. I'm sorry.
You have to sign in on your.
Oh, I have signed.
icon.
You're not signing in.
Oh, darn. Okay, so that one carried. Okay, moving on to our next one. And Councilor McGowan.
Yeah, I'd seek consensus that committee accepts the Hinton Mountain Bike Association with no increase operating ask of $22,000 plus a reserve allocation of $7,000. And I don't see the need to speak to it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So we have a consensus on the floor, council. Anyone else want to speak to that? Okay, so I'm gonna keep this. All right, we have consensus request from Councilor McGowan that committee seeks consensus to include the Hinton Mountain Bike Association 2024 operating and reserve allocation funding request to the proposed 2024 operating budget. And the operating request is 22,000 and a reserve allocation of 7,000.
Point of clarification, Madam Chair, it's that committee seek consensus to include, not allocate. We can't allocate. We're in that committee.
And thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we have this before us, so council, if you would please vote. And that is carried. Thank you, council. And our next one is the Arts Society of Hinton and Councilor Strasher.
Thank you, Councilor Race. I'd like to seek committee's consensus to include Arts Society of Hinton with a $1,000 decrease, resulting in an operating ask of 64,000. And I don't need to speak to it either. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And council, any questions? Nothing? Okay, we'll wait for this one to come up. So if it's okay with you guys, I'm just gonna read what I have on my paper here and then also read what the decrease is, okay, in the total amount. Okay. So I will call the question that committee seek consensus to include the Arts Society of Hinton 2024 funding request in the proposed 2024 operating budget. And that is a $1,000 decrease and the operating ask is $64,000. Is that good with you guys? We'll bring it up on the screen. Okay, and I will ask for everyone to vote, please. And that is carried. No, we don't have your vote.
I didn't get it. I vote for it.
You do, okay, so that is carried. And now we're gonna, yes, sir, Mr. Taylor, Councilor Taylor.
I seek consensus to include the Forest Recreation Management Association request for $20,000 of operational funding contingent upon a presentation to council in the spring of 2024.
And thank you, Council Keller. Did you want to speak to that?
No,
Okay, and also any questions and concerns? on that? Okay, so soon as this one goes up on the board. Okay, that committee seeks consensus to include the Foothills Recreation Management Association 2024 funding request of 20,000 in the proposed 2024 operating budget, contingent on the FRMA presentation to council in spring of 24. And council, would you vote now, please? And that is carried. Thank you very much. And go ahead, please.
Thank you through the chair to the rest of the committee. Just a correction in item E. Item E is the Hinton Historical Society, and there is a second recommended motion that committee seek consensus to enter into a 3-year operating agreement with the Hinton Historical Society. Before you is an added resource document on the table today showing that the Hinton Historical Society is currently in an agreement. It didn't expire in 2023 as we thought earlier. Clarified today that they are actually in, they've only completed 1 year of 2. So that motion will be required. Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
like I mentioned, I'm not as supportive of any increases here. So with the Hinton Historical Society, I don't know what the amount should be. But I'm not in favor of the $20,000 increase for sure. I wait your comments on what you think the amount should be. And the reason for that is that we're facing a huge tax challenge and got to be very careful with things increases at this stage.
Councilor McGowan.
Just a point of clarification then for administration, the $20,000 requested increase, is that by way of the operating agreement? Was it written into the operating agreement? Just trying to remember how that was.
Through the chair to the rest of the committee. So the agreements were drafted, the templated agreement, which this one is, were drafted to not include an actual named amount.
Okay.
Just it's an operating agreement setting out key performance indicators and obligations on both sides. And just says in it that funding is contingent on council's deliberations each year. So we don't have a number in there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, are you putting up a consensus or just giving your thoughts on?
I'm just saying I'm not going to vote for any increase. I don't have a consensus at this point.
Go ahead, Councilor Slash.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to see consensus of committee to include the Hinton Historical Society 2024 funding request at 55,000 in the proposed 2024 operating budget. If I can speak to it. Yes. Yeah, I concur. This is going to be, it's a difficult budget year. I feel, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. Actually, it's a difficult budget year and I'm of a similar mind as some of the other councillors. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will speak to it. You know, initially I thought 55,000 was a good sum to give them. But I'm on this board and I see how hard these people are working. And I'm seeing the momentum that they're building right now in making that museum work. They've got a strong board that they're working with. They're looking at every avenue open to them to make money so they don't have to come here and ask for money. So I'm still at the 70. Thank you. For council, will need something on the board. And Councilor Keller.
Albert.
Oh, no,
what about-
Albert.
Yeah, I just think that consensus request. Oh, that's okay.
Okay, so any more discussion on this? And I will call the question that committee seek consensus to include the Hinton Historical Society 2024 funding request for 55,000 in the proposed 2024 operating budget. And council, if you will please vote now. And that is carried 3-1. Go ahead, sir.
Well, for the next one, I had a motion already that I sent in.
Right, Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, just point of order. We have to recognize who voted against. in that
Oh, and
last
I,
vote.
okay,
Sorry.
and I voted against that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Councilor Taylor.
Jen, could you put up my motion that I sent you, please, for the West Yellow Trail Society? I'm seeking consensus that we include the West Yellow Trail Society funding request for $50,000 in the proposed 2024 operating budget. Contingent on the Trail Society sorting out any issues to the town satisfaction on trail ownership and long-term maintenance. Now, don't know if that's with the county, that's with the province, but before we give a dime, we want that sorted out. But if we don't keep supporting this project, it's going to be difficult for them to get other people to support the project. So I think continuing on a bit is a good idea. I think $100,000 with the budget we face is not something we can do, but I think at $50,000, it's reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor and Councilor Ostashik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm gonna be speaking in support of the consensus request. I appreciate Councilor Taylor's suggestion on how to do this, because this is one that I've been struggling with a little bit. I want to make sure that we're continuing to show support for the project, but I think it's important that the other partners who are still maybe sitting on the fence make a commitment to support this project, because the town of Hinton can't do it on their own, and I don't think the Trail Society can do it on their own either. So I want to make sure that those other partners are joining and signing on to the project. So thank you for that, Councilor Taylor. And as I said, I'm in support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome, Councilor Taylor.
It's general enough that it leaves room for the other partners being a couple of different groups, right? Doesn't have to be a specific group, right? Doesn't have to be, general enough.
I have to ask Councilor Taylor. The town satisfaction, what criteria, what would we have to see to meet the town satisfaction?
Well, I don't know. I don't think we have to get specific, but unless they can come back with like an approved an agreement that somebody's gonna take care of that, that's what they would have to bring us, something in writing that says that the ownership and the maintenance is taken care of in this particular fashion, right? Whoever gets that, could be the province, could be the county, could be somebody that we don't know. That's what I would think it would be. Wouldn't just be a vague promise and then we give away $50,000.
I'm just wondering who makes that decision if council or the town is satisfied. Go ahead, sir.
Through the chair, our intent with the West Yellowhead Trail Society is to bring this back to council prior to releasing the funding. And we have provided $50,000 for 2022. That was to go towards planning. As a part of that planning was the operational maintenance plan. It was all of the necessary crossing agreements. It was detailed construction, all of those different elements that we've been awaiting. Those will all come forward to council prior to, so it will be council's discretion to move ahead with the 50,000, but this is what we consider noted, and we won't be issuing the check until council approves the plan to move forward to the next step of construction.
Good, thank you very much. Okay, so and I don't have this one. There we go. To call the question that committee seeks consensus to include the West Yellowhead Trail Society 2024 funding request for $50,000 in the proposed 2024 operating budget, contingent on the Trail Society sorting out any issues to the town's satisfaction on trail ownership and long-term maintenance. And with that, council, please vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And Councillor McGowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to seek consensus that committee seek consensus to include the Shock Trauma Air Rescue Society STARS 2024 funding request for $20,000 in the proposed 2024 operating budget. And I don't need to speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Council, we do have a consensus request on the floor. Council, would you like to speak to it or any questions, concerns? And seeing and hearing none, I'll call the question. That committee seeks consensus to include the Shock Trauma Air Rescue Society STARS 2024 funding request for $20,000 in the proposed 2024 operating budget. And council, if you would please vote now. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, council. We're moving on to H. And Councillor Taylor.
You don't have a consensus, but again, this is one of those that I don't favor, I don't favor any increase. You will remember the $1,800 was for your Blue Jeans events. The word on the overhead was golf, membership sales, and then for broader initiatives as we're a partner in the organization. And the extra amount was for Lemonade Day, Leadership West Yellow, Small Business Week, entrepreneur events for newcomers, women, LGBTQ, and Indigenous people and business retention expansion activities. The last amount being the higher amount of $5,000. And that was to do something with the information they collected on business retention and expansion activities. So I mean, they can still have a meeting without the $5,000 and get together perhaps with our, what do you call that, business group that we have. So I wouldn't support anything over 30,000 for this request. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just need some clarification. I thought we were talking about the Hinton District Chamber of Commerce request, and then the information that Councillor Taylor referred to, I think, was for Community Futures West Yellowhead programming.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I made a mistake. Please ignore everything I just said.
Thank you.
I can still.
Yeah, I actually, I'd just like to sort of sample council's interest. My understanding is that the increase of $9,200 is, as it's indicated in the report, primarily for staff and utility cost increases. For myself, I'm favorable to that, but I was just trying to remember regarding the sponsorship. Is that the one that's related to beer and Blue Jeans, or was that like for the events?
Beer and Blue Jeans was 1,800, I believe.
Yeah, and it's indicated under H, but I'm just confirming with admin or council if that's it.
And CAO.
Through the chair to council, yes, that's correct. If I remember correctly, I believe it was 2 beer and Blue Jean events. It was the golf tournament sponsorship. It was the parade sponsorship, I believe. And the gala as well, and membership lunches. So it was the grand total sponsorship that they had just packaged all together.
I'm just gonna sit back for a sec. Want to hear from the rest of the council.
And Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know there's nobody here from Hinton District Chamber of Commerce that can speak to it today. But if the proposed increase of $9,200 wasn't approved, just wondering if anybody knows what the impact to the availability of the Visitor Information Center would be.
Thank you, through the chair to the rest of the committee. So there was some discussion from the executive director of the chamber and town administration on this question of the requested increases. So to be clear, we're talking about higher than expected utility costs that they were incurring, and also some staffing costs. And that was primarily the increase of 9,200, and then the other one is signature events, just lumped in here. But so with regards to whether or not they'll be able to operate, they haven't indicated that there will be impacts on the operations. What they'll do is look for internal efficiencies. If I can speak for them, that's what I'd say that they've been communicating this week about that.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
I did have a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce for quite a period of time after we did this presentation. And they had indicated that the difficulty with the summer staffing was that I think it's the contract that was quite inflexible, so they couldn't adjust the hours in order to, when they're not busy, reduce their hours or something like that. So it had more to do with that. And that would, as long as they can operate in a way that they don't lose money, I got the impression that they should be able to cover the majority of the summer with the amount that they had before. And with respect to the increase of utility costs, they did indicate that they had an agreement that said that they are to pay the utility costs for that facility. They might have gone up, but they've gone up 30% for us, and that's the same problem that we face as well. We can't take on other people's utility cost problems when we've got an agreement for them, and not with our challenging budget. That's my take on it.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Councillor Taylor. Council. And is there anything else before I call this question?
Oh, just one thing.
Councillor Taylor.
So 30's the amount they had last year. Looks like it.
Through the chair, yeah, that's correct.
Thank you.
For this component of funding request.
I didn't move anything, by the way.
Councillor Swanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a clarification question regarding the motion. So this motion, by my understanding, would also eliminate the $1,800 sponsorship request. I just need some clarification on that.
GAO.
Through the chair, we were, our intent was to look at this as two different consensus, because we saw them as two different requests from the same organization. So we certainly could do that as one motion or do each request separately.
I could follow up. I'm fine with either of those options. I just want clarification on what this one means. If that means it's only referring to the operating request, or if it's referring to both.
And you can speak, Mr.
Well, I'd like to clarify, thank you, through the chair to the rest of the committee. So the operating ask is specific to their operating agreement. I think that's a pair, you can look at it there. The sponsorship request is a separate item entirely. It's another initiative, and in fact, it's sponsorship, not an operating funding request. So it's a separate, you can think of them with those two handles.
Yes.
I think, I mean, I am, it's not my motion, but I was kind of looking to Councillor Taylor.
Oh,
for what
sure.
His intent was, because it does specifically say operational funding, it doesn't speak to the sponsorship. But when he was speaking to it, I thought he did refer to the sponsorship request.
No, at this point, it's just the $39,000 operating money. If somebody else would like to put another motion for the other thing, by all means, fill your boots. I probably won't vote for it, but you can still do it.
Here's my question. The $39,000, does that include the people to work downstairs? That $6,000, is that part of the 39?
Through the chair, yes, it does.
It is, hey? The 1,800 for the Bureau Blue Jeans, that's not part of it, the 39,
Through the chair, that's correct.
it's not. So what all is taking us to 39?
Through the chair, and thank you, Councillor Taylor, for the additional information. So the breakdown that was provided was the summer staffing was an additional $5,000, that 9,200. And the operational costs of the visitor information center comprise the additional 4,200, which would reflect a true partnership in splitting the direct costs of heat, electricity, phone, and internet for year-round visitor information center operations.
Thank you very much. And Councilman Goon.
Yeah, I'm willing to vote, or pardon me, I'm certainly amenable to looking at this favorably. I think the one consideration that we have to be aware of is if the funding doesn't actually give the Chamber of Commerce the ability to deliver what they've agreed they will deliver on an ongoing basis, then we have to be willing to look at our agreements with them and have that discussion at a later date, which I'm in favor of doing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Taylor.
I don't think they should have to run a summer student program for us and lose money. So in no case should they have to do that. And I think from what they indicated to me that they could just get more flexibility in when they hire and how they hire, that they could overcome that problem and not lose money.
Okay, good. And Councilor Slusher.
Madam Chair, yeah, I'd speak to it quickly. At this time, I'd also be prepared to support it, barring, additional information from the chamber that might indicate that they would have to operate on reduced hours or something like that. Because one of the concerns I have is I feel the visitor information center is pretty critical to the local tourist economy, and that the service they provide there in talking to visitors to our community and talking to them about local attractions, accommodations, and all those things that they do really help people to think of Hinton as more of a destination than they otherwise would. So that would be my concern, but since there's opportunity to be able to get additional information, revisit this before the budget's ultimately passed, I'm okay to support it today.
Okay, good. Thank you, Council. And I'm not hearing any opposition to this consensus, so I will call the question now. The committee seeks consensus to include the Hinton District Chamber of Commerce 2024 funding request for $30,000 operational funding in the proposed 2024 operating budget. And Council, please vote now. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And Councillor McGowan, and then discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to seek consensus that, sorry, I need to get the wording right. I'd like to seek consensus that committee include the sponsorship of the Hinton District Chamber of Commerce 2024 signature event series for $1,800 in the proposed 2024 operating budget. For myself, I think there's actually a lot of bang for the buck involved with a large number of these events. These are signature events in the community, and I think they're important to include. And if council can support that for $1,800, I think that's a pretty big one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We have a consensus on the floor. Council, anyone, Mr. Coates, and I believe you're next, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a question and then probably a statement, depending on what the answer is. I would like to look to administration. This is, I believe the town sponsored this last year. And I'm just wondering how that sponsorship request was handled last year. And maybe why it's not coming forward. Why is it coming forward in this fashion rather than a one-off financial request or some other mechanism?
Through the chair, I can provide a little bit of details on Ms. Juke if she has anything to add, but last year the chamber changed the way that they did sponsorships. Previous to 2023, they would come on an ad hoc basis for each individual event, and they would come forward under. My general assumption would be that the council contingency budget on a initiative or project or event basis. Last year, they changed things a little bit just because they're a small organization to go once to all and seek sponsorship for a package of different events, so they didn't have to come forward on an ad hoc basis. They did come forward with this request for the entirety, and we just thought that it would be a simpler process to simply bring it forward at the very start of our council to avoid this at a later date to budget appropriately.
So I guess my follow-up question then is the sponsorship request going to be handled the same as all the other one-off financial requests then? And in terms of where it's funding from, is the main question, will that 1,800 come out of council contingency? And I'll likely have another follow-up.
Ms. Drew,
Thank you to the chair, to the rest of council. So that is exactly where it did come from in 2023. And one of the things when council developed its policy with regards to one-off financial requests, the strong indication in that was that the requests that come forward only be ones that cannot be funded in another way. And so the thinking was from administration was that rather than bring it forward again as a contingency item, when in fact it's known to come forward every year, to build it in here and consider it that way. And so that was why it was included this year.
thank you very much. And
If I could follow up again, Madam Chair. That being the case, then I don't think I will support it. My concern is that sets precedent then that sponsorship requests for annual events could just be part of a budget item, and I'd rather they weren't. I would rather that council's taking some ownership and some accountability, and that if they approve the sponsorship of an event or a series of events or whatever it is, that council's paying for it out of their contingency fund, and they're considering it along with all the other requests that come throughout a year for sponsoring events. So I won't support it as part of the budget, but if there was an amendment, I guess I could make the amendment. Can I make an amendment, Madam Chair?
you can, but you're in the queue, aren't you? And being there.
No, that's okay. I'll make an amendment.
Okay, yes.
So I'd like to propose an amendment to define that the funding for the Hinton District Chamber of Commerce sponsorship come from the council contingency fund. If I could clarify, we just want to put the words in there, Hinton District Chamber of Commerce sponsorship requests come from the council contingency fund.
So we'll just leave that right there until we deal with that amendment.
Yeah, but in the amendment, though, it's only for the sponsorship request. So after commerce, just put sponsorship request. I don't want it to be confused with their other request and have the whole funding request come from council's. I think administration has an understanding, but the motion should be clear.
Oh, you're fine with that amendment there?
Yep.
Okay, and Councillor Taylor.
So we're gonna vote on the amendment and then vote on the main motion?
Yes.
I understand. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
So council, we do have an amendment. Does anybody have any questions, any concerns that they want to ask about that amendment? Before I call it, okay, so we're just gonna deal with the amendment right now. And I don't know why I don't have that one.
I haven't sent it yet. Hey, Madam Chair.
You guys have it in the train.
I think she's amending.
Just amending of council statutes.
There is John.
I'm having issues with items.
Okay, councils, but we will vote on the amendment first, and then we'll move on to the initial consensus. The amendment is that. That the Hinton and District Chamber of Commerce sponsorship request come from the council contingency fund. And council, please vote no.
I'm voting with my hand. I don't have it here.
Thank you, sir. And Councillor Taylor indicated a yes, so that is carried unanimously. And now we will move back to the main consensus. I'm sorry, just check.
Sorry.
Councilor Good, was that your initial motion?
Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now that we have the full motion, we'd like to speak to it if I may.
And go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I'll be in support of the proposed consensus request. It's $1,800. This is a pretty minimal amount, especially considering what I feel the value is that comes from it. The Chamber of Commerce is very diligent in making sure that at these events, the sponsors of the of their annual sponsorship request are placed front and center. It's very clear who the platinum sponsors are, and I think having the town of Hinton's name and branding at the chamber events show that the town really does value and support our local business community. And like I said, there's no confusion that the town of Hinton is one of the primary supporters of these signature events. For $1,800, I think there's great value in it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And council, does anyone, and Councillor Taylor?
Well, I'd like to be able to support them, but the problem I have is that when they actually came to us and they made a presentation, they said it was for blue beer and blue jeans. And that's where members show up to an event and they buy a beer and they do beer and blue jeans and then membership lunches. And I don't know why we'd be paying for lunches for members and then for golf. I think that I don't mind paying for things like helping to support the gala with something, maybe if there's a junior business program, guest speakers. But that's what they actually said they were going to spend the money on. So that is not an okay expenditure of town money, in my opinion, those two items at least.
Thank you, sir.
So I don't want town money spent on that. I don't know how to fix it, but I don't mind it spent on other projects that are, those ones I mentioned.
Thank you very much. Councilor McGowan.
Yeah, and for myself, looking at the larger picture, understanding that the gala just by itself is a major celebration of what goes on in the community, especially when it comes to business development. And I think going beyond that too is I've been on council long enough that I remember when at least my own personal perception was that the relationship between the town of Hinton and the Chamber of Commerce was not as strong as it could be. I think we have to remember that this is an ongoing partnership to develop and support businesses in the community. And if we're asked, we're being asked to be a sponsor of multiple events for $1,800, that's the big picture. And for myself, the gala is among them, and it by itself is a win. I would support the gala for $1,800 for what it does and celebrates in our community. So I'm comfortable with this. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilor Fletcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think maybe there might have been a little bit of confusion about what the sponsorship money actually goes to. Like, it's not literally going towards buying chamber members lunch. It's not like, hey Ryan, you're a local business owner, you're a good guy. Here's $100, go buy yourself lunch. That's not what it's for. It's the monthly lunch meetings that the Chamber of Commerce hosts, where the business community gets together, and the sponsorship, yes, paying for the lunch is one component of it, but there's also the room rental and all the other associated costs. And that's what the sponsorship money goes to. It's to cover the costs of hosting these events where the business community has an opportunity to get together, have the discussion, the monthly meeting, there's presentations, things like that. It's to sponsor the event so that the event is able to happen. And like I said, at these events, it's not a behind the scenes sponsorship that nobody knows about. The town of Hinton's branding is out there. It's on the floor. It's known that this event is supported by the town of Hinton, along with the other annual sponsors that help it. And it's at the monthly luncheons, and beer and blue jeans. It's not, I'm not spending taxpayer dollar to buy beer, right? If that's what it was, I wouldn't support it either. But it's funding to help make sure that that event is able to happen, where it's an opportunity for the business community to come together, to network. The town's invited, council's invited. It's an opportunity for everyone to get together, discuss concerns amongst the business community, and it's an opportunity that may not otherwise be able to happen without the town. I shouldn't say without the town sponsorship, but corporations and entities within the community sponsoring to make sure that these events can happen. I think it's important the town does show support for the business community in this fashion, but I also believe that council needs to have some ownership of it, which is my previous amendment request to have it come from council contingency fund rather than general budget. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Taylor.
I do feel that member lunches and beer and blue jeans events should be self-supporting events that the chamber pays for themselves. That's not saying that there aren't events that the chamber does that we could support. I think we should support other events, but not those events. Thank you.
Thank you. To administration, I don't know if there's anyone here who can answer this, but we're not the only ones putting in $1,800. There's other people or other organizations within the community who also put in that 1,800, is that correct?
Through the chair to all of committee, my recollection is it was a mail out or a letter that all businesses or short and simple, all businesses entities in the community received and had the same option to participate in the funding in such a fashion.
And CAO.
Through the chair, if I could, just for some information, this request was consistent with what we did last year. $1,800 was at the platinum sponsorship level. The next level down, which is the gold sponsorship for 1,500, included member recognition, annual small business awards gala, the annual golf tournament, but it did not include the quarterly beer and blue jeans or the annual parades, being Canada Day, the snowflake, and the snowflake parade. So just for some information, to Councillor Stewart point, there is an opportunity to go with a gold sponsor, and it would sponsor all those with the exception of beer and blue jeans and the parades.
Sorry, can you say that again, please, the last part?
If we did want to go with a gold level sponsorship, which is $1,500, that would include the golf tournament, the annual small business awards gala, and general membership recognition, but it does not include sponsorship of the annual parades nor the quarterly beer and blue jeans events.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to the rest of the committee. Just to clarify where we're at, just to restate, this is about including a budget amount, not about actually buying the sponsorship. So the proposal is to include it in the council contingency fund budget, but an RFD would come forward to council with options on different levels of sponsorship to purchase when the time comes and the advertisements come out. So the whole matter can be revisited quite thoroughly at that time with information in front of us that we don't have today. My apologies.
Alrighty, so you're saying that this $1,800 could come from contingency, but we will have another meeting to decide what level at platinum, gold.
Correct, and to restate, this is a question of including it in the proposed budget, and that is the only movement that's happening tonight, potentially. Thank you.
Thank you. So, council, we do have a consensus. I think we're ready to vote on this. So, that committee seeks consensus to include sponsorship of the Hinton and District Chamber of Commerce 2024 signature event series for $1,800 in the sponsorship request come from the council contingency fund. And council, please all vote. And that is carried 3-1 with Stewart, Councillor Taylor against. Thank you. And council, our next one is I on the agenda. And Councillor Taylor.
The stuff I said before, bring it forward to now. That's remember, this is basically the way I see this is we're taking on we're getting invited to take on program funding for another agency, the Community Futures. In particular, we're getting which is to me a federal government responsibility, and this is a new agency request. This is not the time with the budget that we have to be taking on federal government program or responsibilities. We're getting asked to fund Lemonade Day, Leadership West Yellowhead, Small Business Week, entrepreneur events for newcomers, women, LGBTQ, and Indigenous peoples in business retention and expansion activities. The last one being $5,000, and that's trying to figure out how they're going to use all that information that they collected. Which they could just get together with whatever our business group is as well. So won't be supporting taking on federal government responsibilities in this regard. Thank you.
So Counselor Taylor, will you be putting forward a consensus to not support? Number one,
No, I'm just saying I won't support it.
okay. So we will need a consensus from someone to do something with this. Or we just move on to his third.
I'm gonna try and move on and simplify things a little bit for some of the remaining. I'd like to seek consensus that items J, K, L, and M be included in the draft budget as presented.
Also, we do have a consensus on the floor. Counselor Magoon, with J, you'll move that there's a second part to that.
That's my understanding, Madam Chair, is that that's as presented. So it would include both the operating and in-kind.
But council, we do have a consensus on the floor. Does council want to speak to it? Thank you, Counselor Taylor.
The $92,000 for the airport, is that what's our commitment to have to pay that?
CAO.
To the chair, I believe I will pass that along to Mr. Chair.
Thank you, CAO, and I'm the chair of the rest committee. I can speak to it a little bit, although I believe Ms. Forbo will have more in-depth information, but that is a longstanding agreement, referencing your agreement schedule here. That is the Yellowhead County Hinton cost share agreement, started in 2013 or 14 and continuing to 2029. That agreement. The amount that it costs per year may vary a little bit, but that is a budgeted amount. That's just
Do the committee, yes, and generally we're between 82 and 94,000. The agreement term mirrors the revenue sharing agreement that we also have with Yellowhead County, so both agreements were signed at the same time, agreed upon in 2013, but became effective in 2014 to 2029.
Counselor Taylor, are you good with that?
Yeah, it was good. I support that motion.
Sorry, point of clarification, Madam Chair.
Yep.
I would like to indicate that when I mentioned as presented in the report also, like in section J, it does also specify that there's a consensus to enter into a 3-year operating agreement. That was part of the report. I just don't want to try and sneak something in.
Yeah.
My understanding is that's part of the report.
Thank you. And CAO.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just provide maybe a little bit more context for the Wild Mountain Music Festival. This one, we didn't quite know where to put it last year. It did come forward as a one-off financial request. That was referred to the community agency process where it was eventually approved for $6,500 in that process. The problem being, and based on discussion we've had as administration, is that's a very late process for this event, this specific event. I believe we made that motion on July 4th. And the actual event was scheduled to go forward July 14th to 16th. So there's a very tight turnaround on that particular one. We thought that although this one is new and they are now, they meet the definition of a civic agency, to look at this one a little bit differently, budgeted ahead of time. So there's a little bit of knowledge or some security from this group on how much they're going to receive in funding.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to speak to that, I think that's a great way to play it. I think it's smart. It makes sure that the group understands what's available to them, what's coming long term. I mean, some of the operating agreements that we've come up with, I can look at disc golf as an example. It just works well. You know, it's good in that the membership doesn't have to guess, well, what's council going to give us this year, if anything, right? They they move ahead with some sustainable planning, and that's just a smart way to do things. So thanks administration. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
So I do have a question for admin. So when I call this, do I need to read each section individually? I know it's saying, JKL, but would I,
Through the chair, I don't think you would have to read all of the individual ones, as long as you're comfortable that there's an understanding amongst council as to what the vote is on. I think that would be sufficient unless there's any opposition to that.
so will the minutes reflect what each one was?
We certainly can add all of those individual motions into clump them together into the minutes.
Good. So council, if there's no opposition and I'm not hearing any, I will call this question. And I don't have it. The committee seek consensus to include J, K, L, and M be included in the draft budget as presented. And please don't vote now. And that is carried unanimously, and thank you. And Councilor Sasha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question for administration then. If I gets left out of the discussion in any direction here tonight, what happens with it?
CAO.
Through the chair, our preference would be to make a motion on it either way, and it may not be to include it or to not include it. But we can certainly include this as a parking lot item to discuss at a future date as well, if council's not comfortable making the decision now. But we would like some direction on what to do with this particular agency for budget.
And Councilor Sasha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Like to seek consensus of the committee to include the Community Futures West Yellowhead 2024 funding request for $10,000 operational funding in the proposed 2024 operating budget. Speak to it. So I understand that Community Futures West Yellowhead is an organization that receives the bulk of its funding from other levels of government, both provincial and federal. There hasn't historically been a big request for participation from their municipal partners, but I think special effort was made on the part of Community Futures to make sure that the events that they're proposing to support with the municipal contribution are events that aren't part of the mandate for the funding that they get from the other levels of government, and that they are focused on, they're locally focused. And I don't have the list in front of me, but I know it's been read out. Can I put on it, Councillor Taylor?
Sure.
No, that's okay. I don't know where it is on there.
Right in the
It's
right there, that amount there.
okay, right. So it's the Lemonade Day 2024 Leadership West Yellowhead 2024 and 2025 cohorts, Small Business Week 2024, entrepreneurship events for newcomers, women, and LGBTQ, and Indigenous peoples business retention and expansion activities. They're all events that have a local impact, and that they're tailored to be beneficial locally. Well, in an ideal world, should the municipality have to support an organization that's set up to work as a provincial organization? No, but in this event, I am in support of, or in this instance, I am in support of helping Community Futures to make sure that some of these locally focused events can continue to happen in the future. part about entering into a 3-year operating agreement. I didn't include that in my direction because I think that's a different conversation. And I would actually want some information from administration before I would agree to entering into a 3-year operating agreement. So right now, I'd just like it to be component 1 of section I. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councilor Snatchik. So council, we do have a consensus on the floor. Any conversation, any question? I will say I will support this. I see where Community Futures does such good work in our community and so many people in the community can benefit from this, so I will support this. And Councilor McGowan.
This is one where I will support it, as Ms. Duke had mentioned earlier, for the purposes of seeing it go towards the budget. I have to admit, though, I still am on the fence a little bit about this. I would like to know sort of what the overall impact of not providing that $10,000 would be. Because it is a difficult budgetary year, right? And this is one of those ones where as difficult as it is, we're gonna have to scrimp and save as much as possible. But I'm happy to see it move forward to the budget for a future decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McGowan. And Council, anybody else? And seeing none, I will call the question. That committee seeks consensus to include the Community Futures West Yellowhead 2024 funding request for $10,000 operational funding in the proposed 2024 operating budget. And council, please vote no. And that is carried with 3 voting in favor and Councilor Taylor voting against. I believe we're done that one area, that correct? So, any other questions, any other conversation on, item 5.1? Council, nothing, so we're gonna move on to, 5.2, and that is the APE contract proposal for the 2024. Councilor Taylor, did you have something to add?
Could we have a biological break?
Could we? Yes, we're gonna take a little 7-minute break right now. Thank you very much.